Today's going to be a fun one. I'm going to go on a 5-hour drive each way to go look at a barn find 1978 Puch Maxi Sport. This has the silver fenders, or the chrome fenders, as well as snowflake wheels. It looks like it was disassembled at some point, but for the price, it's hard to pass up. So let's take a 5-hour journey and see what this looks like. Okay, I've made it here to Green River. Now to find this bike. As you see, it's in the middle of the desert. Kind of cool. We got the bike loaded up, as well as a free GoPed. So the previous owner threw this in. He said it's just sitting around, so that's a fun little side project. But we have the Maxi loaded up, strapped down, and ready to go over the Rocky Mountains. Let's do this. We've made it back home, but of course it is pitch black out. So we'll take a closer look at this in the light tomorrow, but we do have the bike secured, as well as the snowflake rims. Hell yeah. Now that the lights come out, you can see what we're working with. We do have the front and rear snowflake with the brake plates. Unfortunately, both the front and rear tire and tubes are missing or need to be replaced. Up here, the whole throttle assembly and brake lever is gone, but we do still have the cables. Probably, again, need to be replaced. On the bottom here, we do have a 14mm intake, but no carb. The engine is seized and the spark plug was removed. Luckily, this was sitting in a desert, so we do have a lot of kind of dust from the area it's been sitting outside, but the inside doesn't have too much rust. For the gas tank, it's actually pretty nice inside. Hard to really see in there, but pretty clear. So, main thing this bike needs is we need to unseize this top end, put a carb, install these snowflakes or even a set of spoked rims, and add a seat. Other than that, I need to remove all the chrome bits and start wire wheeling or using some, what is it called? Steel wool. But the bike itself does look in pretty good condition under all the surface rust. So let's slowly take it apart and see how clean we can get it. Starting things off strong, I'm going to be taking off this chrome bezel for the headlight and checking out what this is. It seems to have rotted through the actual rear lens, but to remove this, I'm just going to be using a simple flathead down here. Once this is removed, we're going to tilt it forwards, pop it up, and see what's going on behind the front headlight. It took a little persuasion. I used a flathead screwdriver and just popped it, but let's see if we can pop it off front. All right, so we need to undo these connections for the light socket, and then we can remove this front headlight and the glass. Now that we have this headlight and lens bezel removed, you can kind of see the chrome has deteriorated on this. It just kind of essentially is peeling up. So it's cracked on the inside, the chrome coating, and it's peeling back. The light still might actually be functional, but the reflectiveness of the rear headlight might not be perfect. As you can see, there's little pieces floating around, so we'll have to get that removed. The chrome isn't too pitted. A lot of it should clean out. A little bit of this area might be a little bit duller, but we'll see what we can do. I was able to remove most of that surface rust. There are a couple little bit deeper areas, but as you can see, the entire thing is pretty close to mirror finish. There are a couple scuffs here and there, and a little bit areas I need to work on a little bit more, but for 10 minutes, not bad. Let's put this back on and grab the next thing. Now that we have that headlight replaced. I want to start working on these side rails. These have some very deep pitting, so they'll probably have to be replaced, but for now, we'll just take them off and get them cleaned up. Removing these rails is very simple. You're just going to be using a 13mm wrench on either side, and there's going to be a bolt here for the top shock, as well as the top engine mount bolt right here. Once both of these are removed, these side rails can be removed and hopefully restored. Now that we have these side rails removed, you can kind of see the pitting that we're gonna have to be dealing with. A lot of it's gonna clean up, but this heavier stuff is gonna remain. But let's put it on the wire wheel and clean it up with some steel wool. These have turned out pretty well. One of them does have some heavy pitting in the chrome itself, but it still has quite a nice shine, and all the surface rust has been removed, so that's always nice. Now to work on this rear luggage rack, I need to remove these two bolts in the fender, as well as this bolt for the seat post. Once these are removed, I need to take off these side hooks. Put this down. I need to take off these side hooks that someone installed, and unfortunately it broke through the paint right there. But someone installed 4 of those. I'm just gonna remove them since they're not supposed to be there, and then tackle this surface rust. Hopefully this will come out a little bit nicer. I've got everything cleaned up nicely. Still have to do a little bit, touch-ups here and there, but we have the rack side rails and that front bezel up here replaced. There's a couple of nooks and crannies that I haven't spent a bunch of time on, but got a lot of the main surface rust, and it's looking pretty damn well. I do actually have a spare 1.5 seat that kind of goes on here, so we might slap that on. And for these shocks, I do have a nicer set of shocks. Might steal from this Maxi Lux here, so might take these and slap it on to this Maxi Sport. And for the rims, I was able to find the axle kind of nuts here. Got a matching set for both wheels, which is nice, but I'm still trying to find a cheap set of tires and tubes that we can throw on here. But next thing I'm going to do is probably clean up the last little bit of chrome on these handlebars, and probably start working on trying to unseize this engine. Taking a closer look, I also see that this is a 77 and not a 78. So that's a kind of weird little fact, but whatever. Cool bike nonetheless. After doing some searching around, I found some Honda Hobbit rims that I wasn't using, and I took the tire and tube setup from this and slapped it over onto these snowflake rims. There's still the little nubs on the actual tires, so they're pretty new. Have a little bit of use here and there, but pretty awesome little set. The rims themselves cleaned up very nicely, so cannot wait to get these put on the Maxi and have an actual roller. It is the next day, and as you can see, we now have a roller. I didn't have any chain tensioners, so I ended up just welding a washer onto a M6 screw, and it works for now before the new treats order comes in. But most of the chrome has cleaned up pretty well for the quick little 10-minute job. I still need to take off these handlebars and get that figured out. But now that the wheel is on, we can try to get this engine unseized. First thing I'm gonna do is grab some WD-40 right here and get that thrown right down into the cylinder. This is gonna help those rings loosen up a little bit and hopefully get this unseized. These aluminum cylinders, the stock aluminum cylinders, tend to seize a little bit if the owner isn't treating them perfectly. But it's pretty easy to unseize and hopefully see what's inside here. let's see if just holding the clutch and putting some force on the pedals is able to break free the cylinder. We did put a little bit of WD-40 in, as you saw, so it shouldn't be too much more, but hopefully this is possible. Let's try something else. So this thing doesn't want to budge. So we're going to be removing the head by taking off these 4 10mm bolts. Take this head off and see what we're working with. Now that we have the 4 bolts from the head removed, we have some PB blaster and some WD-40 leaking out, as well as a little friend, I guess, who came from Utah. But let's take off the head and see what we got. Actually, not too bad. This should be able to clean up pretty well. And on the inside, it's not showing too much, but the cylinder wall doesn't seem terrible. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's huge scratches or anything anywhere. Probably just a little bit of a soft seize. Alright, to fix this, or at least the next try, I'm going to be using this piece of wood and my little persuasion hammer, which is a mini 3-pound sledgehammer. Well, still have to cut a little bit off to fit it in here, but essentially we're going to be making this a dowel and smacking the piston, hopefully unseizing it. I ended up swapping out for a smaller piece of wood, but as you can see, we are making progress and the piston is almost at the back of the exhaust port. So it's almost at bottom dead center. So once we keep going, this should loosen up and we should have a free piston. I've been able to get a little bit of movement and the cylinder walls look really clean, like honestly brand new. It keeps getting stuck at one point in here, so I'm going to be removing this flywheel cover, putting a socket on here and maybe an extension, and giving it a little bit more torque and see what I can do to see if I can free up these rings. If you still have the original flywheel nut, this is going to be a 14mm. I went ahead and grabbed a 14mm socket and threw it on an 18-inch breaker bar, and that's given me enough leverage to put this on and actually get this to actually go. So now that this is moving, we have to work through this little bit of a tough spot. But as you see, we do not have a seized engine anymore, which is cool. I'm going to now lube up the cylinder walls with a little bit of 2-stroke oil and hopefully get some oil down into the crank. Now that we put some 2-stroke oil in here to help the rings get seated a little bit better, it is actually able to turn over by hand now, which is much easier. There's still a little bit of drag, so I'm going to keep doing this for a little bit and hopefully free up any kind of rough spot. But as you can see, we don't have a seized piston anymore, and we are ready to put the top back on, or I mean the head. Still need to clean this off, get all the debris and burnt oil off of here, but this head looks pretty good to go and should be ready for a rebuild. Cleaned out and ready to go. Not perfect, but looking a whole lot better. Now that we got this cylinder head replaced, you can definitely hear we got some compression. And that's before even putting in a spark plug, so this thing will run, just gotta button up the rest of it. Before I put the bike back in the garage for now, I want to tackle a little bit of the surface rust on this exhaust. It's kind of bugging me that it's bright orange on this relatively clean bike. So I'm just going to be using a little bit of steel wool, elbow grease, and we'll see how it turns out. After about 5 minutes of polishing, we have a nice shine to it. It will never have that mirror finish, but the chrome is looking a lot better. Still has some heavy pitting in some areas, but at least it's not orange anymore. But time to put this inside and work on the next thing. Order finally came in from Treats. Let's get this opened up and see what we got for the bike. What I picked up for this Maxi was a couple new of these chain tensioners, as well as a new petcock, some fuel line, a set of these OEM kind of upgraded shocks, and then a couple internal parts for this spare 14mm Bing I had lying around. Let's get this all thrown on a bike and see if we can get it started. Installing one of these new petcocks is pretty easy. Just need a 14mm wrench, and yeah, that's about it. So I'm gonna take this and loosen the nut back here. Make sure it'll took a wire with it. So get this off. It should pop right out. Notice when you are moving this nut, it's actually pushing both threads outwards, and when you tighten it, it pulls them both inwards, and then there's a gasket in between. So let's get this taken out. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there is the old petcock, and the reason we're changing it out is the actual lever is broken off. These tend to seize up pretty often, and it's just something that you'll have to replace. So this new one and this old one match up pretty well. Looks like this has a little bit larger of a reserve on this one, but just got to use this 14mm nut and this 14mm gasket right here, a little plastic gasket, and we can easily get it replaced. Setting up this new petcock is pretty easy. I'm threading it with the nut towards the petcock, and the little spacer would be towards the actual frame of the bike. Once we have this first threaded on, I'm going to take this little grommet or gasket and drop it inside of here, push it in here, and start tightening it up with a 14mm wrench. So let me get that taken care of. Once you have the thread started, it's pretty easy. Just gotta tighten this up, and it's gonna suck both sides in until the gasket meets in the center. Once that's pretty tight, we're gonna come back with a 14mm wrench, tighten it down, making sure that this spigot is pointed downwards at a nice direct 90-degree angle, so we're not kind of one way or another. Next up is to install the carburetor. I'm gonna be using this spare 14mm carb and intake that I have to the side. Had to buy a couple new internal parts to get that going. For the top, I'm not gonna be using this spare top I had. I'm actually gonna be using this OEM Bing carb top that was actually already on the bike, came with it. It was just actually, the rest of the carb is missing. So let's put this on and see if we can get this started. Now that we have this 14mm intake and Bing installed, as well as this original Bing top hat, everything seems to be lined up and ready to go. We just have to do a little plumbing or route a little bit of fuel line. Once that's ready, we'll put a little carb cleaner in here and see if we can get it to fire off. Let's see if we can get this to try to fire off. So now we just need to get some gas mixed up, thrown in, and see if we can get it to run in idle. All right, let's throw some gas in here. See if we can get this to start for the first time. Oh, Jesus Christ, this fucking gas tank sucks. All right, let's do this off camera. All right, let's see if we can get this thing started. Prime. All right, see if we can get this first start going. Bike that idles. Fuck yeah. All right, I think the throttle got stuck a little bit. There it goes. Now it's nice. So yeah, still a little bit of work here and there, but first start in the bag. And here we are just a couple days later. We got that new 1.5 seat installed, as well as these OEM upgraded shocks. Got some nicer chrome bars that aren't pitted, and this thing is looking really good. Still have to polish up the chrome in some areas, and I need to let the engine run a little bit longer, get those bearings nice and oiled up and running nice and smooth. But this bike came out very, very clean. Likes to start up instantly, idles nicely, and pulls up to about 30-35 miles an hour. So this is an awesome little bike. Let's see if we can get it started, actually. Do this on camera. Let's throw some gas on. Throw the choke down. Fill up with a little bit of gas. Let's see if we can get this to start. Pretty sweet little bike. Working headlight and everything.